So yeah, we're finally on to mages. I've been keeping this one on the back burner for a while simply because of the sheer amount of mages we have in Smite. Not to mention the extremely dedicated mage mains out there that will do everything they can to convince me Anubis ult is SS tier. But if this is the first video in this series you're seeing, I've already covered warriors, guardians and assassins, and this is basically ranking every ultimate for, in this case, mages against each other in a tier list format. These are ranked strictly against each other, not against other classes or basic abilities, and aren't meant to be a definitive best ultimate list. An S+ tier mage ultimate, for example, doesn't necessarily mean it's the best ability in the game. Like, share, subscribe, Discord link is down below, and let's get right into it. So Agni ultimate, A+. So obviously for this one, I'm considering the fact that it does have 3 charges. Obviously a single Agni ultimate is really bad, but if you consider the fact that you can have up to 3, it becomes really powerful. The total damage of 2 or 3 bombs from this ability is definitely really competitive, or even higher than a lot of other mage ultimates. Plus it can be thrown from over walls, is in a massive AoE, and combos really well into the rest of his kit, like the stun for example. Apwash, A tier. So I think if I was doing this a while ago, this one may have been a little bit lower, like potentially B+ or something, but I think the 60% anti-heal that this ultimate provides makes it worthy of an A tier placement. Obviously, it can zone and do decent damage. The damage on it's not amazing, especially since people don't really tend to stand in an Apwash ult for the full duration. But I think the 60% healing reduction is one of the more powerful healing reductions for mages, and it's definitely worth an A tier placement. Anubis, A+. So the only reason really this is A+ is because of the community. I know there's going to be a shit ton of people who are going to comment on this video saying Anubis ult is absolutely broken and should be placed higher. For me, I would put Anubis ult in A tier because I think it's just pretty balanced. But taking into account everyone's opinion, I'll put it in A+. Like yes, this ultimate can do some of the highest damage in the game if you stand in it for the full 3 seconds, but who the hell is going to do that? Granted, Anubis can set it up with his own stun, but that stun doesn't last for the full duration of the ultimate. You're only going to confirm a bit of the ultimate off of the stun, not all of it. And really, it's quite easy to juke and dodge. A simple jump dodges most of Anubis' ultimate damage. I don't think it's that good. But as I said, because of community outcry, I'm going to put it in A+. Ao Kuang, S. So simply, this is an execute, and honestly you can't undervalue an execute. I think just this is S tier mostly because of the execute part. Granted it does other things like gives him lifesteal, it can be used as a setup or just confirming damage tool, but for the most part it's just used for the execute. Aphrodite, B+. So I think this one could be considered A as well. But obviously this is a very unique mage ultimate, and for me, I do prefer some kind of damage coming out of my mage, especially if it's a mid lane mage. Granted, Aphrodite can be played elsewhere other than mid lane, but if you have a mage mid laner, you generally want that big bursty ultimate coming out of them, and Aphrodite doesn't really give your team that. Obviously, being completely immune and still able to heal is really good. It's basically a better Aegis at that point. And it can affect 2 people on a much lower cooldown than Aegis, and I do respect how powerful that can be, which is why I think it's potentially could be A tier. But for me, I really just don't like what Aphrodite ultimate brings to the team, and I think it's B+. So Baron Samedi's ultimate, in my opinion, is S tier. This ultimate pretty much just does it all. It doesn't heal, but other than that, it pretty much does everything else. It's got solid damage. It's not completely like on the upper echelon of ultimate damages, but it definitely competes with other mage ultimates, especially if you hit them with a few ticks of the coffin before you hit them with the big burst. And then obviously it stacks up a shit ton of Hysteria, which buffs the rest of your kit, and that 1.5 second stun is just obviously powerful. Chang'e, A tier. So I used to rate this ultimate quite a bit higher, but for me, I think I was rating it just on the fact that, oh, it can stun for 4 or 5 seconds, but realistically that's never going to happen in an actual game. Yes, if you're taking the absolute maximum potential of the ability, this would be very powerful, but in a realistic scenario, this is really only going to hit 1 or 2 people, maybe 3 if you get a really good ultimate off. And to be honest, if you're only hitting 2 people with Chang'e ult, it's not really that good. And in the scenario where you're just going to hit 1 person with it, which does happen quite often, especially in laning phases, it's really bad, so I'm just going to put this in A tier. Chronos, A. So much like Aphrodite, this ultimate provides a very different set of benefits than other mage ultimates. It's sort of like a second life rather than your typical I'm gonna blow you up with my mage ultimate. And for me that is quite hard to rate because sometimes it can completely save your life and then you dominate a team fight, or sometimes it does save your life but you die immediately afterwards, or it doesn't even go off in time, and for me it's just not that amazing. Cordia, A tier again, obviously for very different reasons, but this ultimate just seems solid to me. It does pretty decent damage and can do some of that in an AoE if you manage to hit multiple people with it after the explosion. The CC on it is decent but nothing amazing. It's not a stun or a knock-up or anything like that, but it does have some CC attached to it. And it's obviously got very good range as well, especially if you can bounce it off a wall. Freyja, B+. So for me, I just really don't see the value in Freyja's ultimate all that much. Yeah, the self-banish can buy you some time or potentially save you, and the damage the ability does if you hit all 4 bombs is quite high. But for me personally, I feel like you just Freyja ult, and then if you don't secure the kill, you just die as soon as you land anyway. It doesn't seem that good to me. Speaking of, Hades' ultimate is B tier, one of the worst mage ultimates in the game in my opinion. It's very easy to counter with simple beads, or Aegis, or a jump, or a blink before he ults you. Pretty much any kind of mobility will get you out of this unless it's a very short dash. And he also roots himself in place, which makes him a very easy target for like hunters just standing there auto-attacking him while he ults. Granted, he does get CC immunity and a lot of protections while he's ulting, which does help reduce the damage that he takes. I feel like just rooting yourself in place just to do a bit of damage while it's quite easily countered is just not a very good ultimate. Hebo, A+. So this is your typical, I'm going to do a shit ton of damage to you and you can't really stop it type of ultimate. Granted, it can put Hebo out of position, but you can also save yourself and put yourself back in a good position with it, so that sort of negates it. And this ultimate does its damage pretty much instantly, which is why I like it so much. Compared to a lot of other mage ultimates that have a large charge up time or are quite easy to miss, Hebo is very hard to miss if you're aiming it correctly, since the damage comes out pretty much immediately. Hell, A tier. So as with all of the other stance switches which I've been doing on these tier lists, they all go in A tier. Since depending on how you look at it, you could say Hell is basically a second passive and it's useless, or it gives her a second set of abilities and it's the best ultimate in the game. Obviously not the best ultimate in the game, but you get my point. It's kinda hard to place this one, so I usually just put stance switches in A. Hera, S. So this summons a massive AoE knockup that does pretty good damage, which is already good, and then Argus gets to fight for you afterwards, which is really insane. This ult for me just feels like your typical mage ultimate with upside that Argus just like goes and runs rampant after you use it, so it seems really strong to me, S tier. Isis, A+, bordering on S. I kinda want to put this one in S, but I'm gonna leave it in A+ for now. So it's obviously hands down the best objective secure in the game. If you're doing any kind of fighting around an objective, be that a Phoenix like Siege situation, or a Fire Giant or a Gold Fury or something like that, it will secure the objective for you, do a shit ton of damage to all enemies in range that we're trying to steal, and heal your team up after the fact. So using it in that scenario is like SS tier, completely broken. But in a normal teamfight situation, especially if it's happening in a lane or a Titan room or something, it's quite easy to dodge the damage on this, which is why I haven't quite put it in S tier. Janus, S+. So no other mage ultimate in the game does anything like this. The sheer amount of mobility that this provides, pretty much global mobility for the entire team, is just completely insane. Plus it can be used as your typical I'm going to do some damage to you type ability, though the charge up is quite long and is quite easy to avoid if you use it that way. But honestly, it's S+ for the reason that you can teleport your entire team across the map for rotations. It's not S+ for the fact that it does a lot of damage. Kukulkan, B+, maybe this could be A as well, but I'm going to put it in B+ for now. So this does a lot of damage, I will give it that. It's on the top end of damage for mage ultimates, but it's very easy to miss. I know someone's going to be like, oh, he's just bad at Kukulkan, he misses the ultimate all the time. But really, a lot of people miss this ultimate, even top tier Kukulkan players in the SPL miss this ultimate fairly often. It's definitely not easy to hit, and that's why it's in B+ instead of A or A+. Because like Hebo ultimate, for example, does a bit less damage, but is very easy to confirm and you'll always get the damage off of it if you're playing well. Kukulkan ultimate is quite easy to juke, it's very telegraphed, and if you're not great at Kukulkan, you will miss it quite a lot. Merlin, A. Like I explained with Hell, Merlin is a stand switcher, so his ultimate stays in A. Nox, A+. So this is A+, mostly for the 40% damage reduction on anyone you hit. That damage reduction lasts 5 seconds, and nothing else really compares with that type of utility on a mage ultimate. Granted, it does quite a lot of damage, and it's got good range, good AoE, easy to hit multiple people, but it's really that 40% damage reduction for 5 seconds. If you can apply that onto even 2 people in a teamfight, you're reducing so much damage that it's worth it. Nuar, A tier. So this would be a lot lower if it wasn't for the vision component. Obviously, I'm basing this tier list off of Conquest, and being able to Nuar ult to check if the enemy team's doing an objective, or just get eyes on rotations and things is very powerful. Granted, this ultimate can also just be used to snipe kills or to just generically do damage to people, also be used as a self-banish in a teamfight, but for me, it's really the vision that knocks this ultimate into A tier. Olarun, S tier. So I'm ready to get shit for this because I know a lot of people think Olarun ult is really bad, but I think it's insane. It single-handedly hard counters a lot of gods. You can just stand in your Olarun ult and so many gods just can't do anything to you. Like if you ever tried Thor double tapping an Olarun in his ultimate, it's pretty much impossible. Not to mention it also speeds up his abilities in auto attack, so he just goes absolutely ham when he's put it down. This is one of those big teamfight impact ultimates that I think I would potentially even want to put this in S+ myself, but I know a lot of people think it's bad, so I'm going to put it in S just to appease the people that will probably put this ultimate in B because it doesn't do any damage. Persephone, A+. So I think if it was just after Persephone's release when I was making this video, I would have put this in S or S+ because I was getting absolutely demolished by it. But since looking at what it actually does and playing against it more, I've realised it does have some fairly easy counters, especially in teamfights. If she ults you as a single person or 2 people, it can be quite hard to destroy, but honestly 5 auto attacks from a late game hunter takes absolutely nothing to just get you out of this ultimate, and then all it really does is a small amount of damage. But in certain scenarios this can absolutely demolish people, and the range on it is completely insane, so I'm going to put it in A+. Poseidon, A+, probably bordering on S tier as well. So this is really just your I'm gonna explode you type of ultimate. It's relatively easy to hit, even the small inner circle, quote, small inner circle, is relatively big and you can hit multiple people with it in a team fight. And while something like Anubis, for example, that I mentioned earlier, you can easily jump away from his ultimate, Poseidon has a built-in counter to that, whirlpooling someone, and if that cripple lands, you just crack at them and they die. Really, in a vacuum, this ultimate is incredibly strong. It's only Poseidon's other weaknesses and his lack of mobility and things like that makes this ultimate not that completely insane. If Poseidon had an easy dash or way to get in and just cracking people and get out safely, it would be like S+ probably. But for me, I'm just going to put this in A+. Ra, A tier. So Ra for me is a sort of quintessential balanced mage ultimate. It's relatively hard to hit, but it does a shit ton of damage and also has that lower cooldown, which is really nice. I believe you can get Ra ultimate down to 36 seconds with full CDR, which is completely insane. You can easily get that off twice in a team fight, potentially even 3 times if it's a very long team fight. And for me, this is just a very balanced ultimate. Raijin, S tier. I think this is quite a low S tier, but its ultimate has a lot of versatility. If you're in an unsafe position or you're quite low, you can use the long duration CC immunity and fear people away from you to keep yourself alive while you wait for team backup. If your team's already there and it's a big ass team fight, you can taunt multiple people into your other team's abilities and it's very powerful when used that way, or you can just do a shit ton of damage. If you go for 4 full damage bursts with Raijin ultimate, it's one of the highest damaging mage ultimates in the game. And since it has sort of 3 modes that are all incredibly powerful, I put this in S tier. Scylla, S tier again. So as with a lot of mage ultimates, this one just does an absolute truckload of damage, but this one is resettable when you get a kill. That is the sole reason this is in S tier. If it wasn't resettable, it would be A tier, maybe A+. But the fact that you can reset it and potentially kill multiple people with it, or even if you just kill one person and hit another person for a lot of damage, it becomes incredibly strong. Sol, B tier. So Sol's ultimate was really designed to not be that great, I feel like, because the rest of her kit is very strong. The one application where Sol ult is really strong is for securing objectives, because obviously objectives like Fire Giant and Gold Fury don't really move around very much unless you force them to. So if your team's tanking it correctly, you can just drop all 8 of Sol's beams from the ultimate on the objective, and that's a really good way to secure it or just burn it down. But in a teamfight application, trying to actually hit moving enemies with Sol ult is very difficult. You're only really going to hit 1, 2, maybe 3 of the beams, and then the damage is quite low and it's only got a small knockup. It's not really that strong. The Morrigan, S+. So for me, I see this as different from stance switcher ultimates because it's not a low cooldown switch into your other stance type of ability. It's a very high cooldown, get an entirely new set of abilities. So I'm going to rank this one properly instead of just jamming it in A tier. So obviously, I don't think it really needs explaining why Morrigan Ultimate is in S+. It's one of the best ultimates in the game, since I guess you can kind of think of it as it gives you access to any other ultimate in the game, plus you get their 3 basic abilities as well. Obviously, it's not that strong because you only have 9 other gods to pick from in Conquest and any other 5v5 mode that is. But honestly, with 9 gods, you usually find at least 2 or 3 that are very viable transforms, and you can switch between those for the situation that you need. And honestly, do I really need to explain any more why Morrigan Ultimate is S+? You should probably know by now if you played Smite for a while. Thoth, A tier. You're very quintessential, just very high damage but sort of difficult to hit mage ultimate. It has great range, but honestly if you're trying to hit it at a longer range, it's quite easy to juke and quite predictable to see coming. Vulcan, A tier, for very similar reasons as Thoth. The damage on it can be completely insane, especially when fired at long range, but it's fairly easy to juke. Zeus, A+. This is a massive damage area that can easily hit multiple people, and if Zeus is getting dived on, which is often how you deal with Zeus, you just collapse on him, he can ult on himself and do an absolute shit ton of damage with this. It's also very good at objectives, zoning enemies off of objectives or securing it for your own team. I think this is just a little bit above the balance point for Mage Ultimates. It's a little bit better than stuff like Ra and Thoth, I'd say. And finally, the Jonga Donga himself, S+. So once again, I feel like this is the sort of ultimate that I don't really need to explain why it's so powerful. Giving Zhong an absolute shit ton of protections, it's very easy to hit multiple people with this because it's one of the largest AoEs in the game. It moves with him, so it's very hard to escape. So for example, an Anubis ultimate, I keep going back to this analogy, but Anubis ult is very easy to just get out of range of. Zhonghui can keep walking at you, even with sprints and things like that, and just keep you in range of this ultimate and keep pummeling you with those ghosts, and it just does an absolute shit ton. And that's really what you want out of your mages, I think. But that's about it for this one. I know this one was quite a bit longer than my other ones, but that's just because there's so many mages in the game. If you've watched to the end, then you probably enjoyed it, so don't forget to drop a like and share it around before you leave, but I'll catch you guys in another one later. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.